Hollywood used to have that, right? When they weren't revealed as this fake thing. Now everyone knows them for what they are. They're just recycling old stories and like corrupting them and changing them into things that don't matter. They're taking all the value out of them, right? Who's excited for that? Nobody. So all of that goodwill goes out the window. And then when they're like, oh, this film's coming up, nobody cares. So if there was something to be excited about, we might be excited about it. All right, you guys, how's everybody doing? This is Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and I'm Jon Croft. And Rebecca Croft's here tonight. How you doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yes, you are. I'm doing great. You're doing great. I'm doing great. All of us are doing great. It's a pretty great November so far, even though our kids are really sick. It's a little cold outside, but not too cold. But yeah, they got a pretty bad, like, not quite a chest cold, but kind of like lots of,
Mm-hmm.
not fun stuff. But thankfully, we're okay. So
Yeah.
yeah. And speaking of our kids, our daughter's book, Boxland, is finally starting to come to campaign. We're bringing it to Fund My Comic, and we had to do a lot of numbers, running the numbers and stuff, and trying to get the campaign working. And we have a video that we are working on still, even though the campaign is up. So enjoy it. If it's Sunday, it should be up.
Yeah.
If not on Sunday, then on Monday. But we'll see. And we're getting all the information plugged in there.
Yeah. So where is it? It's on Fund My Comic. That's what you said,
Fund My
right?
Comic.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. So they seem to be the most kind of accommodating
Yeah.
site for campaigns right now. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of Patreon. It looks like you can do project-based fundraising, campaign-based fundraising, but you can also do like just ongoing. Um,
Like a continual, yeah, like almost like a storefront. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So it looks good.
Kind of like for creators, right? A thing for projects and a thing for creators and their continuing work.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So go to Fund My Comic, especially if you are producing literature of any kind, comics mostly, but they also do regular books, kids' books, magazines, other stuff like that. They have another site that they are starting, but it's still in the beginning works, which is called Fundiverse. And so that's going to be for everything else, as far as I know. They're going to have movies on there, they're going to have other campaigns, raising money for other campaigns. But this is really good for the comic book market and also for books and literature and kids books and especially picture book kind of stuff, graphic novels, stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
It is.
And that's what we got. So it works.
Yep.
I hope you guys enjoy it. And we're going to be funding it from the from mid-November to mid-December, and we're hoping to finish it before Christmas. And so our daughter has this extra Christmas present, which is that her book got funded. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
I think we did $1,200 for the whole campaign instead of 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
We realized that in order to do the extra gift, which was framing some of her pages into frames to put up on the wall, we figured that in order to do that, we would have to raise a little tiny bit more money. So
Yep.
yeah, that's what we're doing. It should be great.
Yeah.
So, speaking of campaigns, right? Crowdfunding campaigns are an example of what we're going to be talking about in the coming future in this episode. The coming future, which is before you now. We have this episode about what makes it so difficult for conservative media, films to make a difference in society. And the answer to that question is marketing. Conservative stuff is terribly marketed or not even marketed at all, right? And this is often true for faith-based stuff as well, because that little sub-market underneath Hollywood is not as well traveled. It's kind of a niche market, and so it's often badly marketed or mismarketed. And then a lot of the films in that subgenre of faith-based film are not marketed at all because they just don't have the money to do that. So, and this is quite common, especially with streamers, the advent of streamers. Streamers feel that they don't really need to market because anything that new that comes down the pike, you just get that in your mailbox saying, oh, this is the latest thing on our streamer. And so the filmmakers and the producers, right, and the people who now license it out on their streamer don't feel the need really to market it usually. So that's one of the reasons people like streamers and want to move to streaming is because they feel that they don't have to do marketing by doing the streaming model. And so they save all this money. At least that's what they believe, but it's not necessarily true. So we've discussed in the past that streamers typically don't make money in general. And so save money or not, you're still not making money. But let's talk about the bigger issue of marketing for conservative Christian film. Good film. We need a new Hollywood. We want to create a parallel Hollywood. It's something that's better and competes with Hollywood toe to toe. And the only way to compete with Hollywood toe to toe is to do what Hollywood does, except better. And this is what conservatives haven't figured out. They're great free market people. They're great free market experts, capitalism, all these great ideas, meritocracy. And yet somehow when media and film happens, they're just like looking for their keys. They're like, what do I do next? I don't know what's going on. They don't know how to compete in this marketplace. They don't even know how this stuff works. Like Hollywood, most of Hollywood is a marketing machine. That's what Hollywood really is about. I mean, if you just drive down in LA County or go downtown LA, what do you see? Enormous billboards, the kind of stuff you won't see except in place like LA or New York City or Dubai. These are marketing capitals. Like they're just like, this is part of what is in their culture. It's in their DNA, you know. And so like if you go down like to downtown Tampa or you go to Kansas City or some other city, they don't do this to their cities. They don't care as much about all this marketing. So they're focusing on local businesses and their communities and stuff like that. And often they're more conservative. Often they're more Christian. The flyover states. So they're not part of that culture in Hollywood, right? So we'll talk a little bit about this. If you know a little bit about my story, I am not a marketing genius, by the way. Little disclaimer: this is not my business, marketing. And yet, why am I talking about marketing now? Well, you'll have to look in some of my past videos about how I got here. But since 2020, I got out of the film business. I was in the film business for 15 years, and I would go to LA sometimes, not very often, but I would try to get ready to go to LA, right? You get ready. Where I live in Florida, we have a little local film industry here, but I was learning to be a producer. And so in order to produce, you got to get more content. You got to rub more elbows, rub those elbows with different kinds of filmmakers and get different scripts and stuff, to make stuff happen. And I headed up a local film networking group in the Tampa Bay region. I did a lot of stuff like that. I would go to LA to do the film market, American film market in Santa Monica, typically, when I was doing it back then. This is before 2020. And so I had to learn a lot about film marketing as a producer. I had to learn about building packages. I had to learn about pitches and pitch decks, right? All this stuff. And to be honest, most of my stuff did not make much of a difference in LA because I'm a Christian. At the time, I was a libertarian, so I thought this was the best thing to do. Now I'm a conservative, and my stuff would sell even less well now in Hollywood, the stuff I have now. So I'm not going to go to Hollywood. And so this starts the whole premise, right, of how I'm going to approach this issue. I'm not going to do it in a traditional way. I'm going to do it in a different way. One of the ways you could call it is niche, right? Niche film marketing. So with niche marketing, you have to really know your market really well. You have to really know your market demographic really well. And that's the same as a conservative film. It's the same as faith-based film. You have to know your market really well. And that means you're very familiar with the kind of people who want your kind of film. And the problem with my kinds of films personally, and this is why I don't have a film out there, is that my kinds of films, there's not a large kind of demographic for me to point at and say, yeah, that's definitely the kind of person who want this kind of film. The kind of people that want my kinds of films are intellectual, conservative Christians who appreciate the arts, N Z types, but they could be older, maybe millennials or Gen Xers, probably male. So these are the kind of people who Hollywood has been pushing out of the market for a long time. And Hollywood's not interested in catering to those kinds of people. This reduces the amount of market demographics I have to play with. So I have to kind of trust myself a lot, trust myself on my instincts. And at this point, we're talking about the kind of product you want to make. So when you think about the kind of product you want to make, of course, as an artist, you're going to speak with your gut. Right. So we won't talk too much about this part of it because you could talk about what you're going to make as an artist forever and why you're going to make it. So instead of talking about that, though, we'll talk about what comes after that, which is in development, in pre-production, you're now like, let's say you've got a script, right? Obviously, development means you could change your script and you're changing it for a very specific reason. You're not just changing it because you don't like it. You're changing it because you're trying to make it more appealing to your demographic, and you're trying to make your project more successful. And that is extremely important because the truth is you can accomplish both things. A lot of people, when they approach these works, they think, well, this is my ideal script when they start out. And so they've got the script and they're like, this is my ideal script. And then anytime you take it to someone and you get notes, you start to think, well, this is removing the perfection of my perfect script. So now this is less than perfect. And that is just not the right way to look at this. The way you want to look at it is get input and notes from other people who know what they're talking about, and then integrate that thinking. It could be the specific idea they're giving you, or it could just be the thinking behind that idea. In other words, take the consideration, take it into account, right? And then you integrate your masterful, wonderful storytelling ability and make it work together. Compromise with it to make both happen, which is not really a compromise when you think about it. It's actually making it even better. So if you already come at it thinking it's the best thing ever, it's perfect, and it's just going to take a downgrade from here, that's not the right way to look at it. Think about it like, I can actually improve on this. And there's a way you can improve on it, right? And that's by taking not just any advice, but good advice about your marketing, about how a film is made, about who you're appealing to in your film, who's your demographic, right? Because a lot of artists don't like these words. They don't like demographic. They don't like marketing terms. But the truth is, these things are very personal. Your demographic is the ideal person that you want to reach with your art. In other words, they're the audience in front of you. Let's say you're a musician and you're on stage and you're reaching down to your audience. Are you going to just think of them as a number or a statistic? No. They're a human being, and you want to communicate to them in a way that's most effective. And that's a really important thing to care about when you're making art. Is your art actually reaching the audience? Are you getting swoons in the crowd? Oh my goodness, that was the perfect chord. Or are you kind of boring people out there? And you're putting it out there, but they're just not getting it. You're dishing it out, but they're like, okay, that was an okay song. Right? So, and you could be putting all your passion into that, but they're not jiving with you on the same level. So if you can have this level of passion, but also they're jiving with you, they're on your level, that's when you have something great. That's not bad storytelling. That's actually perfectly fine. That's actually quite good storytelling, right? If your storytelling is reaching people, it's connecting, That's good storytelling. So these terms, demographic, they're actually there to help you make better storytelling. That is to reach the people that you really want to reach, to communicate. Because art really is communication. There's people who say it's not, whatever. I don't know what they're smoking. Art is communicate. It's a language. And so you're using that language to communicate. Now, people might not understand it the same level all the time, right? They're getting it on a subconscious level. But this is still a matter of being on the level with you, following your wavelength, the stuff that you're putting down, right? So one of the things you have to think about, like I say, is demographic. You start out thinking about your audience and who they are and really what, not just what they want, right? Because people are kind of primed when they go into a concert, or they're primed when they're going into a theater. They're primed when they see a trailer about what they expect to see, right? Don't think about that so much, about their expectations. Think about what they really need to see. And so a lot of these questions can help you in development to really make the best kind of picture you can make. Okay, so that's number one. We've gotten past that. Number two, when you think about your demographic, you have to think about how you're going to deliver this to those people. So now you're thinking about the physical product. You're thinking about, like, is it best delivered this way or that way? So that's number two. And that's not actually that difficult of a question. You're imagining the process of handing this product into someone's hands or putting it into their eyeballs or their ears. How are they going to get that? How would you like them to receive this product, right? So that's number two. Try to make that happen. You got to try to make that happen. And considering the technology we have today, you can make that happen, chances are. Even if it's just on YouTube, you can make it happen. So that's not as much of a concern today. Of course, if you want theaters, right, that is the gold standard. This is an extra goal, and it's a very big goal. It's a very difficult goal to do theaters. I've never released one of my things in theaters except literally buying out a theater to put it in theaters, which I have done, but it was not a feature film. So that's a fun process because you always like to see it on the big screen. Our first short film me and Rebecca produced was, we had kind of a cool little short film festival thing, and we ran it, and we like literally got the other films to play alongside of our film. Remember that, Rebecca?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was neat. There was like maybe four short films, and
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty reasonable to buy out the theater. I don't remember how much it
Yeah.
cost, but it was not that much, not as much as we thought it would be.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was a lot of fun. They just played them from DVDs.
You can make your money back if you do some marketing. Like
Yeah.
you really can. It was a little bit of a difficult situation because the lead actress in our film had passed away. And so we had to put a little extra consideration into how to talk about this screening and how to bring people in. And then I had to make speeches in front of everybody with a mic, and just to give the praises of this actress and be very considerate for her. That was unfortunate. It was an unfortunate situation, but people did well. So
Yeah.
we did okay through that. It is possible. It is doable.
Yeah, and I think people were happy to take part in that. It was a good way for them to remember her.
Yeah, we should talk about that film sometime.
Hmm.
It was fun to make.
Yeah, it was.
But speaking of bigger, more feature length product or series, I'm not an expert on series, but I love feature film. That's my medium of choice in my view. It's the kind of stuff I mostly think about is film, but also books and literature. I think about that stuff too. Speaking of which, Rebecca, our book store is up, isn't it?
Yeah, so we have a bookshop, an online bookshop that you can go to at any time. It's called Vine and Branches Bookshop.com. And we
Yep.
sell
And we
books,
specialize in what? What do we specialize in?
yeah, like the classics of Western civilization.
Western civilizational classics.
Yeah, so we have um, fiction, we have fantasy fiction, speculative fiction, have
We have tons of different Bibles.
everything Tolkien and Lewis, and
Hmm.
George George MacDonald, and all the
Hmm.
Bibles.
All the Bibles.
Yes, and journals for writing down amazing quotes that stir your mind as you're reading, and
Hmm.
really good children's books that are classics that you feel comfortable with your kids reading. Nothing modern, nothing secular, nothing.
Well, we don't have anything modern right now.
Yeah, we
We
might.
will in the future.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
might. It's the spirit of modernism that I think I'm talking about. Like that, I don't want to like people are using this word so much now, but basically nothing woke, I guess.
Yeah, right. So I see what you mean by modern. Yes, that is pretty modern.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
nothing like that.
it's a lot of fun. There's a way where I could type in like a genre of books and have them automatically added to the bookstore, and I didn't do that. So all of the books in the bookstore are like handpicked by us that are either on our
Absolutely.
yeah, books that are either on our shelf or books that we dream of reading one day.
Very, very essential.
Yeah, very
This
curated.
is a curated effort, completely curated.
Yeah,
Did we get Aesop's Fables in there yet? I forgot.
of course, fairy tales,
Good.
fables,
Aesop's
legends,
Fables. Yep. Do we have Dante's Inferno?
of course.
Do we have Paradise Lost?
Yes,
Do we have The Fairy Queen?
copy that.
Do we have That Hideous Strength?
Yes.
Yes. First test is passed. Good job.
Yeah.
There will be more tests.
Yes, those were some of the most obvious choices to add on there.
Yeah, didn't we even find a cool quote by Thomas A. Kempis that we
Yeah.
were thinking about using for the bookshop?
Yeah, let's see. Did you share that with me today?
The Imitation of Christ, right?
Yeah, Thomas A. Kempis wrote The Imitation of Christ, which I read as a teenager, and it rather blessed me quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I
I
find
don't think I've read it personally.
I kind of wish I had that book again.
Time to order a book.
Yeah, so Christmas is coming soon. You can order that book for me.
Nice.
You want me to read it now?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll skip the Latin part, but the English translation is I have sought everywhere for peace, but I have found it not, save in nooks and in books.
Amen. That's great.
I like
It's a
that.
perfect quote for a bookshop.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Find yourself a nook and a good book and some peace.
So, Vine and Branches is a great name because obviously the vine represents Christ, but the branches represent what? All the different parts of Christ's church,
Hmm.
which is really cool. And to me, it represents Western civilization,
Yeah, it
all the
very
parts of Western civilization. Yeah.
absolutely. It very much feels to me like a place for people who are seeking, in a way, they're seeking Christianity, and they're curious about Western civilization and how Christ fits in with that, and where is he referenced and how does he come into play with all of these things. And
Yeah.
so I think it's great for someone who's like Christian friendly or like Christian curious, where
I
it's
don't even think you have to overtly mention Christianity. I think
great.
you can even say those who are seeking the timeless wisdom of Western civilization. Bam.
Yeah,
That's Christ ultimately, but you know, there's a lot of people who are learning from Christ and putting it in their work in Western civilization. So anyway, it's going well. So I'm glad the store is up.
yeah. It's the Christ haunted society, right?
Yeah. Yeah, our Christ haunted civilization.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, back to that was a bit of a segue, but back to our study on marketing. So, yes, I like feature films. And of course, all my marketing efforts would apply to feature films. But what you really have to do is think about the niche, the subgenre that you're working with. And if it is niche filmmaking, in a way, it makes it easier than genre work because what you have is a very specific demographic then. And you can start reaching out to that demographic and looking and finding out what kind of stories that demographic likes, right? And you can do that in many places online. But look at the kind of stories that that demographic likes. Like what kinds of films have been successful in that demographic, right? If you're talking about a genre subgenre, this is a little harder. It's more robust. There's too much information. You're going to find a lot of diversity in those successful products. Like let's say your niche is like bicycling or something. There's Ride the Divide. That's a successful film. There's other biking films, right? That one sticks in my head, but there's other ones. So you'd study all those works. Be like, well, what made this so successful, right? So you have to do this kind of market research. Just try to kind of communicate what made this successful, and you can kind of tap into that. You don't have to do that too intentionally, but you can kind of keep that in mind, right? So a lot of people, when they think about this kind of stuff, they don't like it because they think it's inauthentic or it's kind of like tweaking or it's manipulative, tweaking your stuff too much. And a lot of artists don't like this, but I think you have to get used to this kind of thing and you have to really be authentic with it, actually. Don't become inauthentic with it. And another thing to think about too is it's kind of like when you learn about script writing, if you do learn about script writing, you're going to learn that there's a lot of books about script writing that are formulaic. Like, here's the formula you need to write the perfect script or whatever. Or here's how you can write a script in 21 days. Or here's how you can do this. Here's the best, like here's the focus. Here's a script that has the best focus on story, like Robert McGee or something. Here's the Save the Cat, with it just has formulas in it. And you have to remember with these formulas that this is stuff to put under advisement. This is not gospel truth. None of this stuff is gospel truth. What it is something to learn from, and then this gives you confidence as you move forward. You realize that there's some things that you don't have to worry about because you've already got this taken care of. Other things you really need to put in consideration when you move forward, because this could be a source of difficulty later on if you don't really do this thing well. Most films, just like most businesses, fail. That is, they don't make a profit. So this is number one consideration. If you want to have a consideration for something, right, for right off the bat, put that in your pipe and smoke it, right? So understand that you're probably not going to be able to pay off your investors, right? And so if that's true and you start getting money and you start telling your investors, I'm going to pay you back, how can you say that? How can you do that? You can't do that and be an honest person. So what does that mean? It means you really do have to take all these marketing things into consideration if you want to be ahead of the pack to actually make a profit, right? So don't just kind of shoot from the hip and start making guarantees, and then you're going to feel pretty bad later on when you can't pay off your investors. And you're going to find me there in your head going, I told you so. I already told you that. Remember? So don't lie to people. Be like, I'm going to pay you back or whatever. Understand right off the bat, most films, most businesses fail, meaning they don't make money. They don't make profits. That's just not how most films are. So, like Save the Cat with a Script, right? If you learn from the formula, it'll give you guidance on polishing up that script to possibly make it better. There's places where you can have exceptions, but these exceptions are really things like this is potentially better than the norm because this film has something other films don't have. This script has something other scripts don't have. And I'm going to take advantage of that difference. Know when you've got something unusual like that, and extraordinary like that, but also know that it's typically not going to happen. Typically, you have to start relying on these formulas if you want to become effective in what you're doing. And the formula does not determine your content. It just helps you structure it, right? It's a structure. Similarly with marketing. Marketing doesn't determine your content. It's just a structure for you to assist you to structure your business correctly. That's really all it is. Marketing is not just about advertising or commercialism or something like that. No, marketing is part of how you structure your film when you make it so that later on, in a responsible way, you're actually able to make some money, right? So on the back end of it, after all this whole process is over, hopefully you are actually doing okay, right? It's not necessarily a success in every sense of the word, but it's successful enough so that you can continue making films in the future. You want to be at least successful enough to be able to continue making films. So yes, money is a consideration, but it's not the only consideration at all. You really want to reach your audience. That's the primary goal, is reaching your audience. And because this is your paying audience, right? So reaching your audience does actually have to do with money. Okay, so the foundation that you build this kind of stuff on primarily has to do with story. And so the story that you create, sure, you can go in a reverse direction in a marketing sense and say, what kind of story is going to appeal to my demographic, right? Sure. But hopefully you're not actually writing stories that way. Hopefully what you're doing is you're writing stories based upon what you really care about, what you know about, what God has blessed you to talk about. And if you're writing stories based on that, then your demographic flows naturally from that, right? So that's number one. You're laying it on a bedrock of story, and that means you have to communicate that story through what you would call your pitch or your pitch deck earlier rather than later. Early on, you've got your pitch, you've got your pitch deck. When I was at AFM, I was trying to sell scripts. I was selling story concepts, and I was selling scripts. And so we didn't even have a film produced. It was a bunch of different scripts and concepts that were in the vein of what distributors already produced. So we knew what distributors wanted and needed, and then we had the story ready. And so you had to be really good on your pitching game. That was the objective, is to do pitching really well. But even if you're not selling your script or selling your film in a marketplace, you should still learn your pitch, right? Your pitch, as they call it, an elevator pitch, is what you would tell someone in an elevator if you only had their attention for like a minute, like 2 or 3 minutes at the most. And so you have to really do a song and dance in front of somebody, which is, yes, it's passionate, but it's really to the point, right to the point of where you're coming from. And typically when you start these kinds of things, it's about a character. It's about a character and what they're going through. So you want a relatable character, you want to share what they're going through, and then you have an angle, which is why this particular story is more interesting than the last story that they saw of this genre. Why is this different? How is it different? How does it appeal to the audience in a different way? And also another issue is, what problem does this solve in the world? So your pitch also deals with what kind of problem you're solving in the world. Maybe a lack of awareness on some issue, right? Some social issue, or audience who's never seen this or that before. And so they're finally seeing this kind of film. And that can happen in many different ways. So you're kind of trying to reach the other person through your pitch. You're trying to relate to them on a very human level. And the way this is going to help you is not just to give a pitch, right? It's understanding the most basic parts of your argument. You're essentially creating an argument, and that argument is, or like a claim, right? And that claim is that the audience needs to see this, right? This is what the audience needs to see, and why are you the person to bring that to them? So not only is the story special, but you're the right person to tell that story. That's a really key part of this that some people miss, because often what you'll see is, well, this is similar to another pitch I heard. but I can tell in a different way, or somebody else can make this film better than this person who's pitching me in an elevator. So that's why that second part is really important. You have to show, demonstrate that you're the perfect person to create this story, right? So that's part of your pitch. But if you think about it, there are three different forms of argumentation, as the Greeks taught, right? Pathos, ethos, and logos. And so in any sales pitch, now I'm not here to do sales, even though I'm talking about marketing, right? This is not about sales because it's not about making the sale. And yet it is, right? It is about doing that. It is about salesmanship and making the sale in the sense of this is a product. Let's just cut to the chase. This is a product and you are selling it to somebody. But this is a really cool product. This is a really cool product. This is the kind of product that there's a great vision behind it, right? It's not just a physical widget, right? There's a great vision behind it. There's story, there's plot, there's character, there's a character arc. There's a lot of things happening here. There's a lot of things to be excited about, right? And so you don't have to think about it like you're selling a thing. But the truth is you are selling a thing. So you're creating an argument, and most good arguments, they have all three of those things. Pathos, which is the human relatability element, which is often emotional, right? Like you're a person like me, you understand when you get up in the morning and you don't feel good, especially if your coffee maker's not working or some other problem that's very human relatable, right? And it's very like you and me, we get each other, you understand how this feels, right? That's pathos. Actors are good at this. They tend to be very good at pathos, right? Then there's ethos, which is what? This is the structure by which you operate, but it's on a very human level. It's a very human authority. It's the badge on your coat that says, I am the one authorized to make this story, right? This is the second part of the pitch I was talking about. Why you're the person to make this story. It's the authority that you have on this subject, right? Logos is a little different. Logos is rational. Logos is reasonable. Logos is very intellectual, and it reasons with your audience. It's kind of the reason you're making the project. It's kind of the purpose behind it. And in other words, it thinks of a larger value to society. It thinks of why you're doing it. Logos is the why, right? And so it has this deep purpose to it that's kind of beyond, almost beyond human comprehension, right? It doesn't relate to us necessarily emotionally. It doesn't relate to us necessarily with human authority, like we're doing this because you should do this, because it's the right thing to do. No, it's transcends that, right? It's like this larger 40,000 mile view. Christ is the logos, right? So he's the plan for everything, and he invents rational logic itself, not like the laws of the universe itself. So it's got this deeper purpose behind it, where ethos is very immediate. It's very like, I deserve to do this because I'm the right person to do this. But logos appeals on a very deep, rational, moral level, almost, right? So that's an extra bit to put into your argument. But, not to be preachy about it, but it can just be a reasonable desire, right? It can be a very reasonable, rational thing that needs to happen, you know? It could be statistical data behind it. It could be a lot of things that kind of relates your film to the larger marketplace and says why it would be different and better. So it doesn't always have to be so grand of a vision. but it speaks on more than just the human level today. So that's your arguments, right? Then what you have to think about is you're competing with a bunch of other films in that genre or that niche. So you need to think about your packaging. Your packaging is when you put a film together, you've got your script, you've got your these other rational arguments, right? You've got the logos, the pathos, the ethos. These are different kinds of arguments, and those can literally take the form, not just in your pitch for a few minutes, but now we're talking about a package. This is a material that you have to share with people, right? And so this kind of package you have to put together, it has your talent in it. Who's your talent going to be? And you don't even have to have your talent. You can project the kind of talent that you want to have or that should be in this film, right? But if you do have talent, that's part of your package. It's probably the primary part of your package is your talent. And it doesn't have to be well-known talent. That's not necessary, especially today, right? Because stars don't necessarily guarantee any kind of viewership like they used to. So talent isn't necessarily going to add dollar signs, but it might add legitimacy, right? Like the ethos, right? It's part of your ethos to have talent, right? Because at least you know this talent can pull it off and it makes you look legitimate. But it's not necessarily going to add to your logos, as in the dollar signs coming in later. It could add to your pathos, right? They can pull off these difficult scenes. You also need, like I mentioned, the logos, right? That takes the form possibly in graphs, charts and graphs, comparing your film to other films in the marketplace, how well this film could perform, you know, that could equal dollar signs actually, where talent might not. Other packaging you might have is any funds you have already raised or what you've done in the past, right? Like if like mentioning talent is kind of like mentioning your crew, your director, and your above the line people, right? Who do you have working on this? Have they done anything in the past? That's important to mention. That's part of your package. Any photos or physical media, and then any digital media such as DVDs, trailers, clips, things of this nature, right? These days we have AI, so you can create previses with AI. I think a previs is a really good use for AI, frankly, where I don't necessarily agree with using AI in the film. I think using it as a previs is a really good idea. So you can start visualizing things that way. And then parts of your charts and graphs and your statistics is competitors, comparing yourself to other films. What kind of money have these kinds of films made in the past? And then your overall vision, which is what you really want your film to accomplish in the marketplace. And that's where conservative films could really shine here. The vision is the overall purpose of why you're making this film. It can also take the shape of an artistic vision, which I think is not happening enough in conservative and faith-based film. You really need an artistic and aesthetic vision for your story. More than ever, you need that. So having a cinematographer as part of your package that's done a certain quality of work really is important here. And a lot of people overlook that actually. They really overlook the kind of visuals that you could be getting. I would even do a picture book of sorts called a lookbook, where what you're doing is you're going on location, not necessarily on location like the official locations, but on similar kinds of locations that you want to shoot your story, and you bring your cinematographer with you and you get the kind of visuals that you want to show up in your picture. So that's called a lookbook. And you can also do that literally like a storyboard, which I think is a cool idea. I've never done that personally because it seemed a little daunting to me in pre-production to do that. But I think that it could actually turn out to be really helpful asset in your package because it really is you putting your best foot forward to show that you care about the visuals a great deal, right? And that it's a top priority for you. So I think that's really a good idea. You know, in marketing, people have this concept called funnels. They have funnel hacking. They have a lot of different concepts of funnels. Funnels are how you treat your customer. They're how you relate to your customer based on what point of sale you're at. Like, are you just like drawing in awareness, raising awareness for your brand, or are you at the point of sale, or are you just kind of like sparking interest in what you're doing? A more advanced way to look at funnels is that you are considering how social media is now, Patreon, these other more modern ways of dealing with fans. You could call them fans. I think is probably a better way to look at it today. You're relating to them in a different way to where your funnel is cycling. And so you're starting out with a possible customer, right? But then you have point of sale. And now instead of it being about that sale, instead of that being the point of your whole marketing relationship, it's not about that anymore. It's more about a trust building relationship in which your fan base always returns to you, is always aware of what you're doing, and you're building a continual relationship with fans. This is this is perfect right now. It's in the water. It's what Hollywood should be doing actually, but they're not doing it enough. But crowdfunding people are. Patreon folks, YouTube creators, they understand this stuff, right? And a lot of this stuff is about creating a relationship with your fans that's continual. And so, whatever you're creating, then your fans know about. They're fully aware of what you're doing and what's going on because you've provided enough information, enough points of contact that your fan base is not even, it's not even about the sale any longer. So the bottom of the funnel, right? There's a funnel, and at the top is like just generating interest. Your branding comes into play, and you're bringing people in, and you're talking about a product, and you're developing interest. And at a certain point, you kind of propose the sale, and then at the bottom of the funnel is the sale. And that's when they're supposed to go through the funnel, and everything's going to be great after that, right? No. So the reality is now with more interesting marketing perspective, we can see that a fan base is really built through authenticity, is really built through a continual building of community, essentially. And so you're building this community, and the sale is not even a factor, right? Because in order to be part of that community, there probably has been a sale at some point, or they're on the way to the sale, or in order to get more content, they need to make a sale. You know, um, they're going to need to purchase something at some point in order to be part of that community, very possibly. And so that's a really important aspect here. And platforms, there's lots of platforms like Substack, other platforms where it makes it a lot easier to accomplish this, right? Because notifications are a part of it, but also just a product is can almost always be part of it, which could be your next post or your next podcast or your next bit of merchandising that you have coming up the pike. And you've got some new product you could be raising awareness for, right? So where they're more traditional platforms in Hollywood, where they're more traditional studios, even people like Daily Wire or these other newer platforms, they almost can't compete with this. And it's true that Daily Wire, they're trying to do this because they have like the all access thing that I'm not part of, but some people want that. And that's because they want to know everything that Daily Wire is doing. They want to buy all their knickknacks. They want to do all that stuff. I'm not that much into Daily Wire. I just want to know what's going on, right? And I want to know when they create culture building content. That's what I want to know. So I don't need to get an all access thing to do that. But a lot of other creators, you do need to do that. And these are the ones I'm talking about. The ones that are creating things quite often, and they're building their fan base all the time. And now every new video or every new post or whatever they're doing is building that relationship. And they can curate that to where some of these cost money and some of them don't. Some of these products do and some of them don't. And so you have to think about what your audience wants, right? And then you provide that for them. So another great model for this, besides like Substack, YouTube, places where you might have subscribers, Patreon maybe, you go on Patreon, you can pay for extra benefits to get more access to more content, right? Well, another great way to do this is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is probably the best platform to doing this because not only do you have a variety of products and a variety of updates you can give out and notifications and emails, which keeps you in contact with your fan base quite a bit, a lot of points of contact. You also have the time factor with a crowdfund. You have a limited amount of time to raise a certain amount of funds, and this creates a sense of urgency and importance. And so when you have that as an extra factor, what it really does is it builds awareness, it builds urgency, it builds kind of like a call to action kind of feel to it. And that's kind of what Hollywood used to have when they were creating must-see film stuff, right? When they were putting out a film, sometimes it would be like a year out and people were like, oh, I can't wait for this film. Let's talk about it. And then a month away, people are like, it's like a countdown, right? Up until the release of the film, and people were talking about all that during that time. Hollywood used to have that, right? When they weren't revealed as this fake thing. Now everyone knows them for what they are. They're just recycling old stories and like corrupting them and changing them into things that don't matter. They're taking all the value out of them, right? Who's excited for that? Nobody. So all of that goodwill goes out the window. And then when they're like, oh, this film's coming up, nobody cares. So if there was something to be excited about, we might be excited about it. Well, crowdfunding can restore that feeling of excitement and urgency. And you can give lots of updates and things like this and keep your audience engaged. I know what you're thinking. Yes, I'm going to bring up Angel Studios because Angel Studios does this really well. So as it comes to filmmaking, and as it comes to a successful marketing platform, you've got Angel Studios. So those guys, the Harmon brothers, were well known already before they even made Angel Studios as commercial directors. They were making some really funny commercials. And then all their stuff happened with VidAngel, and then they were in a lawsuit, and then they made Angel Studios, raised $5 million, and raised money for The Chosen. And The Chosen was a very successful crowdfund. And those fans that were with The Chosen then, many of them are still with The Chosen now, even after The Chosen left Angel, started their own studio called 5 and 2 Studios. This is years later. And that same fan base that raised like $1 million, which today is not that much, for a crowdfund back then, that was substantial, right? And that same fan base is with them now. So you see what I'm talking about with the funnels? It's a continual nurturing of that fan base. And that can happen continually. So with a series, right? The beauty of a series, obviously, is that every year you could have another crowdfund. And if that wears people out, well, that's probably means your formula is not working well. But if it gets people excited, well, that's a good thing. And The Chosen has done that well. It gets people excited. They have their own Chosen Con that they put on every year now, I think. They've debated whether they should do it every year. They might do it every other year. I don't remember. But it's every year or every other year. And they say they lose money on it, but they still do it anyway. And I know why they do it, right? Because it's about marketing. It's about raising awareness out in the public for what they're doing and what's going on. I've mentioned this before, but people like Daily Wire and a lot of conservative platforms, they don't understand this. They don't understand why crowdfunding is valuable. They don't understand why having a continual fan base, just raising more awareness all the time, is valuable. And that's because it works. It's valuable because it works. So there's a reason that The Chosen continues to raise money every year, and they raise enough money to make it happen. And by the way, you might think with The Chosen in a critical way and say, well, they're at Amazon Studios now. Why do they need our help? Like, don't they already have the money to produce this from Amazon MGM Studios? No. The reason they don't is because the arrangement they have with Amazon MGM was for creative control, and that means they were not going to get a bunch of money from them. So they only get a small amount of money from Amazon MGM so that they can retain creative control. So that creative control is very valuable commodity. And The Chosen and Dallas Jenkins has made it a high priority to make sure that his stuff is correctly made according to scripture. So that's why they don't get a lot of money from Amazon. And that's why they have to continue raising money from the public so they can pay for their expenses to make each season happen in the way it needs to happen. And it's just going to get more and more difficult every season because they have bigger and bigger things planned to make it better and better. They're working up to this, but like they're doing it successfully. And that's because they have a rabid fan base. But if that fan base wasn't utilized properly, it would go to naught, right? You'd be excited, but you wouldn't necessarily get a product out of it, you know? And so all that excitement needs to be channeled. It needs to be properly channeled into supporting The Chosen in the correct way. And so how is that going to happen without what they're doing? It has to happen the way they're doing it. They're just not using Angel Studios anymore. They're using, now they utilize the Come and See Foundation, which is a nonprofit. And it's not really a crowdfunding platform. It's just a place to donate to so that that money goes to The Chosen and is utilized properly, including translating it into multiple languages, which is also what they fund and make sure that happens correctly. So this is like their own little nonprofit that they've got going on. But a filmmaker like a conservative or Christian filmmaker who learns these lessons and properly utilizes this knowledge to build a fan base has a far greater chance of earning profits on the other end of making a film compared to what it used to be 5 or 10 years ago. So it used to be you would make this thing, you'd do all this work, and then it would get taken from you in Hollywood. They would own it, lock, stock, and barrel. You might get paid a few $1,000s, but you'd probably lose the rights to your film, and then it might or might not get distributed. Whether or not they said it would be distributed, it might not be distributed. Like it might not be distributed properly. The marketing and the trailers might be all done incorrectly, and so good luck with all that. And good luck, by the way, with fighting it if you want to ensure that this property is treated well. You probably have no right to do that. So you have no rights over your property. Um, and that's that. So, what kind of marketing can a conservative do with their film if there's no platform to distribute your property correctly? Well, this is a problem. So when Daily Wire happened, they're probably the best example of a conservative streamer that wants to be involved in affecting the culture, right? I wouldn't consider Angel Studios conservative. They're like super mildly conservative, if anything. It's more like they're family friendly. They're like a family friendly, faith based content creator. So, and they use crowdfunding to do it. But Daily Wire is explicitly conservative. And so the hope, I think, was for conservative filmmakers out there that Daily Wire would be accepting submissions and producing work from a variety of directors and producers and curating work and building an incubator to affect the culture for good. And I think in the last year or so, many of us have been disappointed to learn that Daily Wire doesn't seem interested in doing this. And so instead, they have their very few passion projects and there are very few political documentaries that they want to produce. And that's really, it seems like that's really all they want to do. So this is very disappointing for me because this doesn't affect the culture. I think hope's dashed on the rocks. What are conservative filmmakers then going to be able to do if they can't go to Daily Wire or some kind of established streaming platform where distribution can be taken care of for you? Don't bet that the cavalry's coming for you. It's probably not coming. So what do you have to do? You have to, chances are, make your own crowdfund, right, for your film. And so how do you do this if, let's say, you're not used to crowdfunding, you're not used to reaching out to a fan base that you might or might not even have, right? So if you haven't been used to reaching out and building fans, maybe on social media or what have you, in the past, you're writing blind in a dark room and you're hoping this is going to work out and you don't know if it's going to work out. Well, guess what? It's probably not going to work out. It's not to be negative. It's not to be, a doomsayer, whatever. Don't bet that just because you are the greatest writer and producer in existence that anybody cares that you've made a new film. There's so much content out in the world right now. People probably wouldn't even be able to find your film. So it's not personal. If your film never gets seen and played enough time to pay for itself, it probably won't. You're competing with a monster in marketing. Number two, right? So first, there's the ubiquity problem. Nobody knows you from Adam. Second, there's a marketing problem. If there is marketing, it's going to be overwhelmed by someone else's marketing. So it's going to get buried underneath the noise, right? I don't care if you go on the podcasting circuit and talk up your film. I don't care if you collect emails and you send them out. I don't care if you go on social media and you say, look, check out my film. That's a lot of work you can do that will go to naught. And again, not meaning to be negative or, but be wise about it. Understand that a bunch of other people are trying to do what you're doing. So why are you going to be the one who's the one out of 50 products that are successful? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. 50 products at any point is reaching the airwaves right now. Maybe only one or two of them are successful out of all those. That's including Hollywood stuff. So why is your stuff going to be better than Hollywood stuff and going to be seen? It's probably not. I don't mean to discourage you. Understand, unless you're prepared for this, you're going to start thinking that none of this matters and you should just go home and do something else. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying be wise, be smart about it. This is not something you can just do tomorrow. Okay, there's people who've been doing this their entire lives, and now they're throwing billions of dollars at it too. In addition, you're probably not going to do that, be able to compete with that. That's just the fact. Okay. So what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to treat your product like a niche product, understand your niche, understand where these people hang out on the internet, and swamp that area with your crowdfunding projects. Yes, projects plural. This is one script is all you need. One script is all you need. Start making that project with that one script. You don't even have to produce the whole thing. Start producing that script. Produce it as a variety of products to be crowdfunded, right? Including possibly something like a comic book, including possibly a lookbook, like I mentioned before, including possibly a short film, including possibly a trailer and clips, which you won't be able to crowdfund for that, but you can produce it and crowdfund for other things from that. That's important stuff to make. Almost any crowdfund needs something like a good video, which helps sell your crowdfund, which we're producing right now for our daughter's book, Boxland.
Yeah.
So that's a very important thing you have to do. You got to get used to making that stuff just pro bono, and make it as quick as you can, but make it planned out really well. So make a trailer, make a clip, both of those hopefully. And you could make a variety of lengths of trailers. I personally like the idea of a minute long trailer along with the traditional trailer. So that minute long or less than a minute long trailer is great for like vertical video. It takes advantage of the social media platforms much better than a traditional trailer. So send that one out there and then send out your regular trailer. And with those video products, right, you can sell the rest of your crowd funds. These other crowd funds are meant to have a snowball effect. So take 3 months for each one, start your smaller one. That's like $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 fan base you're working towards, right? So raise money for that first. You've got no fans from Adam, right? That's how you start building up fans. A small, easy to accomplish crowd fund. Well, from that, you've now got contact with a good 50 fans, possibly, and you've got their emails. You can hopefully, from that, start making your new crowd fund, which those people might show up for as well. And you start building this so called community or fan base within maybe Patreon in addition. Or we mentioned, right, Fund My Comic, which has potentially a store for the filmmaker or for the artist, right? To say, like, here's what I'm doing in the future. So do the first crowdfund, open up that store, and then do your second crowdfund. So you're getting a twofer there. That's a snowball, right? It's a snowball effect. So I'm not saying it's going to be an exponential growth, but the idea is that you're you're you've gotten someone interested in this story, this idea, this concept. You've sold it well. You've thought about your package. You've thought about how to sell it using a variety of different methods of argumentation, right? This is all stuff you got to put under your belt, like tool set stuff, right? So you started your first one with this tool set, this growing tool set. Take that tool set, amp it up for your next crowdfund, which is a bigger crowdfund, right? 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, right? Well, there you go. Same thing. You're amping it up more. Some of those people get to be Patreon people, right? Subscribestar or whatever you're using. Fund My Comic. Well, maybe your next one is your feature film, or maybe your next one is your short film, right? And so the idea is you continue snowballing this until maybe a year later, you've got a good 1,000 fans or 5,000. Wow. Imagine 5,000 fans, right? And you've got their information, you're keeping them updated. Maybe they've joined your Substack, right? This is how you just continue to build community. And that community is not about the sale. The community is about story, right? This story matters. And so you're a face in this company. You talk about story. The things you talk about have to matter to this demographic. And if they can matter, you can continue building. Now you've got your next script and your next story. And you might not have to snowball this one as much. You might snowball a little bit, maybe make a short first or something. You could start putting it out there in the water and saying, what do you guys want to see next? You could start doing polling and be like, what's the next thing you want me to do? Would you rather a story about this or a story about that? Because I really like this story, but this other story was always something in my head. And so it's something that you care about, but it's also something you can involve your fan base with. You know, Angel Studios has something similar to this, right? Where they have a guild, and that guild is a continual fan base. And that fan base gets to do something extra. They get to vote on what kind of product amplifies light, is the question that they use. Does this amplify light? And the guild gets to decide that. And the guild gets to like watch all of these early short films. They call them torches. And the torch is like the first part of the crowdfund of the Statue of Liberty that the guy who made the Statue of Liberty created. He made the torch part first, and he sent it around and said, if you want to see the rest of the Statue of Liberty, like, here's the torch, send us money. That's how the Statue of Liberty got created, guys. It was a crowdfund. So this idea is not that new, really. It's like seed money, right? It's like, I like this concept, this vision. So you got to be able to communicate this vision well to other people. If you can communicate that to your demographic, now you got something here. And then you just have to keep snowballing it. And now the next thing you need, right, besides a fan base, is other peers, right? This is a thing that a lot of people don't understand. But we here at Media Moses, Cultural Warfare, we care about this stuff. This is stuff we really care about. Next level, beyond a fan base for a creator, is creators as peers. A community of creators, right? Literally like Hollywood, right? A community of creators who support each other, bless each other, help each other, kind of rub elbows together, help make each other's work better and better. And there are institutions that are required to do that. And if conservatives don't get this through their head, I'm like, why have you guys not talked about this? You have to create an award show to do this, and then multiple award shows. Yeah, but let's just start with one. And you have to create, it's not like a union thing. You don't necessarily need a union, but it's kind of like an association or an advocacy network, right? Something like that. And you have to create institutions of accountability, such as a Better Bureau, Better Business Bureau type thing. We check stuff, we make sure that people are on the up and up, and we advocate, right? Like, the award show is important because that's also a nonprofit, and it organizes people in that industry to think about the quality of the industry, how well they're doing. And so you can do that in multiple ways. Better Business is a way to do that, right? A Chamber of Commerce talks about this stuff sometimes because they want to benefit their community. And so without these kind of institutions benefiting their community on a peer-to-peer basis, they're not doing well. Like, you don't even know if you're doing well. How do you know that? Your fans can't tell you because they don't work in this field, right? They're just hoping you're going to make something that they're going to like to watch. You need people in your field who can help hold you accountable, who can help you do better business practices, who can help you learn new tricks, right? Who you can work with if you didn't like working with your last producer. Who am I going to work with now? Well, networking, right? So there's got to be like a community or a networked community for artists as well. And that's pretty important. Like an incubator is how to start something like that, or you do that in college sometimes, right? You might start this kind of peer-to-peer kind of camaraderie with people in college. Well, what are you going to do if there's no professional organization later on and you've been doing this, but you don't really have a place to rub elbows, right? It's like networking, but it's, places to hang out, things to do together, and friendships to hold each other accountable. Well, this can be official. This can be an institution. So unless people are building these kinds of things, I mean, good luck with making something sustainable. One artist is not going to change the culture that much. You need multiple artists, multiple products to have an effect in the culture. Any additional thoughts, Rebecca, from you? Because I don't know. I hope I've touched all the bases, but I don't know.
You covered a lot of bases. There's really so much to learn about it. That's for sure. But
It really is.
I liked what you were saying. I kept sensing this theme of a story within a story, and so it's not just that you're trying to advertise yourself. You're telling the story of the project that you are passionate about and
Right.
why you're passionate about it, why you should make it. And that's the story within the other story, the story that you're trying to sell, the story that you're trying to make. And
Yeah, that's well said.
everything is a story. Even the bookstore that we've just started. The bookshop in itself is a story. And then
Yeah.
us creating it is a story. There's always a story to tell to help expand the understanding of the project.
I hope you're going to be telling that story more, honey, about the bookstore.
Yeah.
Because I know you're on X with me now, right? So we can talk about it there.
Yeah, I'm on X now, so that's exciting. I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, X is kind of like a place that some people think of as a wasteland. Um, Other people think of as where a bunch of crazies argue. Other people think of as like, who are these hoity-toity Twitterati, as they used to call them? Like this is not related to my life at all. Sure, I can see all of that, but I think it's good. It's a good test for soundbite kind of stuff. You put a soundbite out there, and you got to keep it short and sweet, but meaningful. That's good. It's a good thing.
Yep, that sounds good.
I like your thought on it being a story. I think that's dead on accurate. Sure, some people they don't have the sense of self grandiosity to be like, oh yeah, this is important enough for me to talk about myself over and over. I agree that that doesn't appeal to me either. Talking about myself, talking about what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm actually not that interested in doing that. What I would rather do, though, is package it as a piece of art. I think that's more interesting to me. And it's less kind of, I don't know, it's less weird to me. But I know for a lot of people who aren't artists, they'd probably think that's weird. But to me, it's like, no, it's okay to couch this in a story, right? That might seem maybe even at first untrue or embellished in some way. But like, I'm not trying to embellish or make it unbelievable, but sometimes real stories are stranger than fiction. But they don't need to be strange, right? They just need to be something interesting and something that means something that's valuable. And it's going to be valuable to somebody, right? Even if it's not valuable to us at the time, it's going to mean something to somebody, especially if you're living your dreams in some way that you didn't think you could be doing earlier, and now you're doing it and you're like, wow, that was more difficult in the beginning, but now it seems like, now that I've been through it, it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. Or wow, I'd never thought I would be doing this. But there's a lot of things to learn there too, like on the way. Talking about snowballing a project, I think the beauty of that is, you might be staring down an entire feature script and being like, I can do this. But then when you start looking into the numbers, or you start writing out the budget, or you start making the package, like I was mentioning, you're going to start to feel a little bit overwhelmed, right? And you're going to start to second guess yourself, especially if you've never made a film before. You're going to start to think, what am I doing? Like, is this crazy? Well, if you think about it in terms that I've been mentioning, snowballing a project, right? Now it's not so daunting. You can break it down into smaller projects. The beauty of this, right, is not only that it's not as daunting, like, well, for some people, they might be thinking, just make the film, right? Instead, you're making 4 different projects, right, on the way to your film. But the truth is, you might be surprised. As you make smaller projects, it gives you more confidence about the decisions in making your bigger project. And it often lets you know how you were doing things incorrectly in the beginning. Like you thought you could make it this way, but actually, as you made your short film, you realized what you needed to realize in order to actually shoot your feature film. So snowballing is actually sometimes a necessity in order to make a good feature. It's quite often necessary to actually even make the bigger project because, frankly, some of these things are daunting and some of these things are more difficult than we think. And then when we start to do them, we're like, wow, it's just a miracle that I even got this thing made. And then the amount of stuff you learn in that process is enormous. Enormous. So how can you not utilize that knowledge to making a better feature? Just doesn't make sense. Of course, you're going to make a better feature now. And you might even go through a few different actors. You might go through different locations in doing that because you realize something new about it. And you realize that in order to have a bigger, better, more grand scale vision for your feature, you had to do something different. So, there's a lot of great things about this. But most of all, you can start thinking about how your fans think about you, as in, what can you do that's worthy of these fans? Like, we really should be very grateful whenever any of us get a single fan, like who are like, wow, I'm interested in what this guy's doing or what Rebecca's doing. Like you're doing some cool stuff. You got your new story that's going up on your Substack, right?
Yeah.
You got some cool stuff happening.
Yeah, I'm doing some episodic writing on Fridays, and that's been a lot of fun and scary to like not know what I'm going to write each Friday, but it's
Like you really write it like right there, don't you?
yeah, I try to work on it a little bit during the week, but it's it's
I mean, that's kind of cool,
it's
I have to
fun.
say.
Yeah, it is fun. I do know where it's going. I know where it's going to end up, but I don't know how to get there yet.
Not to spend too long on this, but it is cool because aren't you working on two different short stories at the same time?
Well, for the paid subscribers on Substack, there are just a few. It's
Well, the girl in her tower,
called
right?
The Girl in Her Tower. Yeah.
And then the new one is Lovely and Lily, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a story within a story where the girl in her tower is told a story, and it's a fairy tale called Lovely and Lily. And it's part of the secret fairy tales, and they're a secret because their meaning is a mystery to most.
Maybe even to you, right?
Yeah.
That's great. See, I love that.
Yep.
It's just cool to watch people like in the middle of their working and they're producing it as they're writing it, and it just adds a little extra layer of excitement.
Yeah. It is exciting.
But to feel like you have one extra fan, like let's say you get an extra fan every week, that really means something, doesn't it?
Yeah. It really does.
It's really exciting. And so, God willing, we'll be able to do more crowdfunds in the future, not just these Substack writings,
Hmm.
but we'll hopefully be able to produce additional books for Violet. But then also, I'm working on a film. And like I say, I have this friend who is asking for marketing advice. And I have another friend who's working on a film as well. And so, like, a lot of this stuff can go into this show I have been working on in the past and still am working on. I mentioned it in the past, called Development Heaven. And so, Development Heaven is when we talk about our developing our projects in order to become something bigger than just the typical, like, conservative or faith based film, to become a successful project. How do we do that? Why are we doing it this way as opposed to that way? And so getting into the nuts and bolts of that is kind of exciting, I think.
Yes, it is. It's very exciting.
You got that chocolate, don't you? Hot chocolate.
Yeah, it was really good.
Good. Well, I'm excited. I know there's probably stuff I missed in this marketing talk, and there'll be other chances we have to talk about it. But that's what I got for tonight. Love you guys. I hope that the holidays are finding you well, and consider looking up Boxland on Fund My Comic. Hopefully, we'll be able to put a link in the description and we'll be able to start funding right away. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, have a great weekend and give a salute to the culture builder who's making life worth living. We love you guys and we're out. See you later. Have a great weekend. Bye bye. Bye, guys. We'll see you next time.